Imagine standing in a windswept desert valley 5,000 years ago. The sun has just dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in deep indigo and amber. Your world is simple, governed by stone, timber, bone, and soft metals like copper and gold. Then, without warning, the sky tears wide open. A blinding flash of violent, blue-white light pierces the twilight, casting long, frantic shadows across the sand. Seconds later, a roar like thunder, brutal, deep, and bone-rattling, slams into your chest. High above, a streak of orange flame cuts across the clouds, crashing into a ridge just 2 miles away. The next morning, you hike up that ridge. In the center of a shallow, smoking crater, you find a rock like nothing you've ever seen. It's dark, pitch black, and ridiculously heavy for its size. When you strike it with your hardest flint tool, expecting it to shatter into dust, the flint chips instead. The black rock doesn't break. It dents. It sings out with a high, clear ringing sound. By every single rule of ancient metalworking, this object shouldn't exist. You didn't dig it out of a pit. You didn't pan it from a riverbed. It fell from the sky. For centuries, nobody had the slightest clue what it actually was. They just knew this strange material was tougher than copper, stranger than silver, and valued far beyond pure gold. If you ask the average person how humans discovered iron, they'll tell you a neat story about clever miners digging red dirt out of a hillside and melting it down. That story is completely wrong. Long before anyone smelted iron ore from terrestrial rock, ancient civilizations across Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Anatolia were already using iron. Archaeologists excavating Egyptian tombs dating back to 3,300 BCE, centuries before the Iron Age officially began, stumbled upon tiny, exquisitely crafted iron beads strung into royal necklaces. So where did the metal come from? It didn't come from Earth at all. When modern scientists analyzed those ancient Egyptian beads, they detected high traces of nickel, locked together in a specific crystalline ratio that forms under only one set of conditions. Inside the molten cores of dying asteroids, cooling across millions of years in the vacuum of space. The very first iron humans ever touched was extraterrestrial metal. Welcome to the sky metal era. Iron wasn't something you manufactured, it was an absolute miracle of chance. Ancient peoples had no concept of outer space, so when heavy metal crashed out of the clouds wrapped in fire, they interpreted it as divine intervention. In Sumerian, the word for iron was anbar, or metal from heaven. In Egyptian, it was biz-npt, meaning black metal of the sky. High priests wore meteorite amulets to ward off dark spirits. When King Tutankhamun was entombed in 1323 BCE, placed right beside his right thigh was a sleek dagger, forged from a nickel-rich meteorite, the ultimate flex of divine power. Meteorite iron had one crippling flaw. It was impossibly rare and completely unpredictable. You couldn't build an empire's weapons out of rocks that only fell when the sky decided to drop them. If iron was ever going to rewrite human history, someone had to figure out how to pull it from the ground under their own feet. That breakthrough happened by complete accident. For thousands of years, humanity was comfortably settled into the Bronze Age, melting copper and tin inside clay kilns. These early furnaces reached around 1,100 degrees Celsius, hot enough to turn copper into liquid, but nowhere near the staggering 1,538 degrees Celsius required to melt pure iron. Iron ore was everywhere, in red riverbanks and dark mountain slopes. The problem was never finding. The problem was that ancient fires weren't hot enough to melt it out of the stone. Then, around 1800 BCE in Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, coppersmiths piled iron-rich rocks into their kilns to act as a flux. When the fire cooled, a dark, ugly, spongy mass was left behind at the bottom. It hadn't melted into a clean pool. It just sat there like a burnt cinder. Normally, a smith would throw this waste material, slag, into the trash. On this day, a smith pulled that glowing lump straight out of the fire and hit it with a heavy stone hammer. Sparks exploded across the room. As the hammer rained down, glass-like impurities trapped inside squeezed out like liquid fire. But the metal itself didn't shatter. Under intense pressure, the hot iron crystals locked together. The more the smith pounded and folded the mass, the tougher it became. This was the blacksmith's accident. The realization that you don't need to melt iron to work it. You just need to heat it enough to become soft, approximately 1,200 degrees Celsius, and beat the impurities out through sheer mechanical force. This birthed the bloomery furnace, turning red dirt into the most useful material on the planet. The Hittite Empire perfected this technique and kept it a strict state secret for nearly 4 centuries, maintaining the first arms monopoly in human history. While rivals spent fortunes importing rare tin for bronze, the Hittites forged iron weapons from local dirt and dominated the Near East. Secrets guarded the tightly rarely survived systemic collapse. Around 1200 BCE, during the Bronze Age collapse, the Hittite capital of Hattusa was burned to ash. The empire shattered, and master blacksmiths fled in every direction as refugees. Wherever they settled, across the Mediterranean, Europe, and Asia, they built new kilns and taught locals how to forge iron. The collapse of an empire democratized the technology. As blacksmiths repeatedly hammered iron inside charcoal fires, the hot metal absorbed carbon from the wood ash. Unknowingly, they were no longer just working iron, they were manufacturing steel. Humanity didn't master iron through a neat, logical line of progress. We stumbled onto it because a rock crashed out of the dark sky 5,000 years ago. We learned to smelt it because someone made a mess at the bottom of a copper furnace. And we spread it across the globe because an ancient empire collapsed so completely that its best-kept secret finally got out. Look at the structural steel framing the building around you, the frame of your car, or the knife in your kitchen. Every piece of modern infrastructure traces its roots back to a skyrock, a furnace mistake, and the fall of the ancient world.